Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Grittiest Takes here on another great day as it's the Flyers' return to action opener. Um, Flyers get set to take on the Boston Bruins early this afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern. First, let me bring in my co-host today. Joe, how you doing today?
Doing well, doing well. As you can see, I got our Summer of Grit t-shirt on because we're about to start the Summer of Grit as Gritty's not allowed in the bubble because, like Gary Bettman said, not enough nasal swabs I can get up that long nose of his to test him and see what's going on there. But, he did make it in the bubble on that billboard. So we're still scaring people in Toronto. So that's good to see.
Yeah, I love this tweet with the billboard on there. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it was great.
But yeah, so hockey got back in action this week. We're a day in as the season opened, the return opened yesterday. With the kind of the round robin games in the was the want to call it qualifying rounds, I guess you call it, to get into the final playoff
Yeah,
spots.
yesterday was a
Um,
just qualifying round. Today actually starts. Why they did that is beyond anybody, but today starts the round robin. I think it was for TV deals.
okay, so yeah,
Because
out of all the qualifying games yesterday, I mean, there's obviously a lot of good games. Rangers, Hurricanes, Blackhawks, Oilers, Panthers, Islanders, Canadians, Penguins, and Jets, Flames, and obviously, man, it feels like it's been forever. But what was it, like a week ago? We went through, gave our predictions on what we thought the best series would be and which ones had the best potential for upsets. So out of the early action, you don't have to go through all the games. But what was your favorite game to watch, and what was your most surprising game out of all the games yesterday?
yeah, remember when we said the Canadians would beat the Penguins? Uh, because that happened. But
Anytime the Penguins lose, it's a good day.
but well, except for potentially this year because they could get the first overall pick, and I would be pissed if they got the first overall pick.
I'd
Um,
rather them get the first pick than make the playoffs and win the cup somehow.
That's a good point, but I don't think they're going to win the cup with this team. That's why I'd rather have them advance. But granted, the Canadians get walloped in the next round, whoever they play. But anyway, Carey Price, stepped up and played like the Carey Price he needed to be in order for them to beat Pittsburgh. He played like his normal. We kind of talked about it in the one video. The only way Pittsburgh was going to lose is if Carey Price decided you're not winning this game. And that's exactly what he decided in the first game. He said, you're not winning this damn game. And that's what happened because the start of the game, it was like 12-1 in shots. And then Price just kept saving everything on Pittsburgh. And they went down the other end and they're like, yeah, about that. We're just going to score on Matt Murray now. And then it started shifting a little bit as the game went on. Pittsburgh still outplayed them as a whole, but it definitely shifted more even. So you like to see that from Montreal because I didn't think they were going to have as much fight as the game went on. I thought it would more just turn to Pittsburgh eventually, and that never did. The other game that was obviously surprising was Chicago came in like they did against St. Louis in the exhibition, like bats out of hell and destroyed. I know the ending score was 6-4, but they destroyed Edmonton because Edmonton only looked good on the power play.
Yeah, I
If
think it
they,
was what
yeah,
6-1 at one point, six
yeah,
two, something like that.
yeah, and then they gave them penalties, and that's the only reason Edmonton made it 6-4 because they looked great on the power play, but on 5-on-5 play, it looked like anybody could have jumped on the ice and looked decent against them. That's how bad they looked in the first game against Chicago on 5-on-5 play. So that's I think also Koskinen will probably start next game, not Mike Smith, because they'll probably change the mojo because obviously that didn't work out too well. But
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, hey, any day you can get a Penguins loss and a Rangers loss in these big series.
I also didn't think that.
Uh, it's a good day for the Flyers. So no,
I
yeah,
didn't
we
think
made it.
that would happen either. That was another surprise game. You brought up a third surprise game. I thought the Rangers would win, but obviously Shesterkin getting ruled unfit to play has a little bit of an effect.
Yeah,
Not because Hank played bad; he played amazing. It's just chemistry adjustments. You're game planning for one goalie, and then like 15, 30 minutes before, it's like, oh, actually, such and such has to play today, and you're like, oh crap, well this guy plays differently than Edgar. Let me game plan for that real quick, 15 minutes before the game. So like it kind of adjusts everything a little bit.
yeah, and then I mean, Panthers Islanders proved to be as close as I think we all thought it was going to be. I mean, 2-1 game, pretty good game there. Um, I mean, I
That
think
Panthers defense.
what was
You
that?
pro that depends how you look at the Panthers defense.
I mean, these are
How
two
close what that game could have been.
these are two pretty even teams going in. I mean, if you look at what they did this regular season. But that was the first slate of games. Good return to action there. I mean, hey, at least Flyers fans can bank on those two big losses there from the Penguins and Rangers after that terrible Sixers performance yesterday. At least that was one good thing for Philadelphia fans to watch.
Yeah.
But hey, moving on to today's games before we get into the Flyers, I'd say, I mean, you got Coyotes, Predators, Blues, Avalanche, Blue Jackets, Maple Leafs, Wild, Canucks. We'll release this video pretty close to that Coyotes Predators start time, so we won't get into that one too much. But out of the other three games, which ones are you looking forward to most? Obviously, outside the Flyers, obviously that's the one we're going to be paying attention to the most. But outside of that one, which one are you looking forward to the most? Me personally, I'm intrigued by that Blues Avalanche game. That sets up for a pretty good first game back for both those teams. Obviously, the defending Cup winner there, and then a very good Avalanche team this year. So that'd be my pick. I don't know about you.
That's a really good pick. Mine would be, well, one is really late, and the other is the early game that I only get to watch an hour. But I do really like the Preds and Arizona series because I think that's going to be really close. Soros has looked good. Obviously, Pekarine's Pekarine, and I don't believe he's close to being done. I think he just had a down year. So he's going to be okay. And then Darcy Kemper came back and looks like he's happening like a bat out of hell himself when Andy Rana had a very good season stepping in for him after he got injured after 29 games and would have been a Vezina Trophy candidate otherwise. So that's a great goalie matchup. By the way, Yari Halak starting today, everybody. But we'll move on to that later. That's a good goalie matchup in that series, and you know how much I love goaltenders, so I focused on that. Now, another one that is interesting would be the Blue Jackets Maple Leafs that I'll just glance over quickly because you have Sheldon Keefe, a new head coach that had a second camp. Toronto looked to be playing a different style, a bit better for the playoffs in their exhibition. But then you obviously have one of the best coaches in Tortorella facing him, who's very experienced, knows how to change and adjust in the millisecond. So that's going to be a very interesting series to follow. A new head coach that everybody, well, not everybody, but a decent amount of people are fairly high on, facing a savvy vet that just is one of the best in the league at getting the most out of everybody on his team. But the last one I was going to say is Wild Canucks because last night when I looked, the Canucks were actually the underdogs. Even though they're the higher seed, in the numbers, they were the underdogs in the line. So I don't know if that switched, but that's why that would be an interesting series for me, because if that didn't switch, they believe the Wild are actually a better team than Vancouver.
Right now, I currently have, according to ESPN, I have Vancouver favorite today in today's game. Not for the series, just today's game. Yeah, for me, I have Vancouver favorite, and the over/under set at 5.5.
Yeah, let me check it.
So I don't know, and we can run through those real quick if you want.
They have them because the guy that told me was our one friend Pirlo that does capping. So I'm assuming he looked at a capping site, but it could have changed. Either way, that's still pretty close for a 7-10 matchup. I think that's going to be a very good matchup also because a caveat to the Wild is Devin Dubnyk. You got Alex Stalock that played great this year. He's one of the best puck-moving goalies, but Doobie's a guy that can take over a game and series at times, and that's not what Alex Stalock's amazing in his own right for what he does, but that's not something he's been proven to do. He hasn't been a workhorse in the league. Devin Dubnyk's a guy that I would kind of say, yeah, I would rely on him. He has had stats that he's been top in the league some years. He just was bad this year. He was really off this year, but if he's able to bounce back, Fleury was really off a little bit this year. So were others, and it seems like they are looking really good in camp. So if someone like him's able to bounce back, if Stalock struggles, that's huge for the Wild. So that's an interesting series to follow. Then Vancouver has a goaltender that's about to hit free agency. So that's very interesting to follow because obviously he wants to light it up.
Yeah, no, I agree. So, yeah, that's today's games and what we have looked forward to today. So, going off that real quick, To preview some of these games today, we'll start with the first game real quick. And obviously, again, can't give too much of a description because we're going against a deadline, but just to get a pick out there. Obviously, as we mentioned, it should be a good game, and as Joe mentioned, a good goalie matchup to start the day here for the NHL. And that's what you're getting in the Predators and Coyotes. So, which right now Nashville's favorite over under set at 5. Which way would you take those two bets?
Yeah, I mean the Coyotes are odd. The Coyotes are a team that I was high on a few weeks ago, and then their general manager just upped and left. And yeah, so their organization, I don't know what the hell's going on out there. So I was thinking that would be a very good series. Obviously, mindset plays in the postseason. There's a lot of stuff going on in-house in that organization, not coaching-wise, but just upper tier-wise. That might distract from the ice, so hopefully that doesn't affect them. But if it does, then the Predators are probably going to play a much better series. If it doesn't, I thought this series was going to go probably 4 or 5 games at least. If that affects the Coyotes though, because they seem to be a team that does unfortunately get affected fairly easily, then they might get swept, honestly, because they just seem to be a team that's young. They don't have a lot of fortitude, I guess might be the word to put it, to even though they added, the only way that might propel them past that is they have Phil Kessel and Taylor Hall. But the problem is you just lowball Taylor Hall. So what motivation does he have to get everybody to go, hey, get your act together and let's win this thing? So that's the other side of that. The Predators are a good team. It's going to be a great goalie matchup. It's just going to depend how Arizona comes to play because of all that's going on in Arizona.
So today you're riding with?
I would probably say Nashville because Arizona's probably going to need an adjustment day because they have all that shit going on and they just need to figure out their team.
And the over-under again is set at 5. Which way would you swing with that?
Those are more lesser goal scoring teams, so I'm not sure if. Well, that would be 3-2. There has been more scoring. I'll go over because of the way the playoffs have been for the most part, other than a couple select games. And the only reason I'm also going over is because the Coyotes, like I said, have to adjust, and their goaltender's coming back. So their goaltender might have to adjust a game, too. So that might let him pot 3 goals against them. And then they win like 3 or 4 goals against them, I meant to say. So then they win 4-3, and then that would obviously put you over the thing. Even 4-2 would obviously put you over it. So that's kind of what I was looking at.
All right, very nice. Well, we're going to skip over the Flyers game for right now. That would be the next game in line if you go by time order. But obviously, because that's our team, that's the game we'll spend most time on. So we'll jump back to that one later. So next game up will be the St. Louis Blues and the Colorado Avalanche. Spread is set at Avalanche are favorite at -1.5. So they're favorite to win that game, and the over under is set at 5.5. So which way are you agreeing with the favorite here in Colorado, or are you going with the underdog in the Blues?
Well, the interesting thing here is going to be what Colorado decides in net, because Francois came over and played amazing. Grubauer's been solid. But Grubauer has experience. The problem is I don't think that should weigh with him because it's not like he's played a hell of a lot in the postseason. He's just more of a veteran in the league as a whole. So I wouldn't weigh that at all. I would go with Francois if I'm Colorado because he looked like your number one guy. If you look at games that you got your asses saved when you actually did play bad, that wasn't by Grubauer most of the time. So just in case that happens, you obviously don't want that to happen, but just in case you have a game like that, you would probably have a better chance of winning with Francois in that situation than you do with Gruby. And it's nothing against Gruby. He's just been a kind of journeyman backup that can become a 1A, 1B certain years, and then other years he's kind of just a B goalie his entire career. That's kind of just been what he's been. He's been good for what he does, but Francois came over from dominating the KHL, which is a league amongst men, and then he did good. I believe it was in Czech's league beforehand. So he did good overseas and then came over here and dominated. So it wasn't as surprising if you actually looked at his numbers overseas for him to. It's whopping that he has that good of stats, but the fact that he's doing well is not as surprising as one would think.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go with Colorado, but that's gonna be a close. The over under was 5.5. You said.
Correct.
Whew. I don't know. That might be a close game because those teams are probably going to be going at each other a little bit. I'm going to go under for that because I think that could be a 2-2 game or a 3-2 game, and that's not going to get you over 5.5. So,
see, real quick,
I think that's going to be an overtime game, but that might be the next overtime game. Honestly, I think that game has a chance to go to OT. Honestly.
Real quick side note, I feel like over-unders in hockey are so hard to pick because, like, you could be right. It could be 3-2 with 20 seconds left, but the Blues could have the goalie pulled so the Avalanche get a cheap goal at the end, and then it makes it 4-2, so then it's the over.
That's
so
why
that's what makes hockey so difficult with the over-under. I mean, it's kind of the same thing, and it's kind of the same thing with basketball in a sense sometimes with the late-game fouling and the free foul shots at the end. So that's the stuff you got to be careful with.
That's why it's hard to bet the under in hockey.
Yeah. Because, like, if it is 3-2 and it's under 5.5, I mean, obviously you wouldn't win if you did bet that, but, like, in reality, you were kind of right because that game was a 3-2 final if there was a goalie in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, moving on to the next game, we got the Blue Jackets and Maple Leafs at 8 p.m. Eastern. At that game, we have the Toronto Maple Leafs favorite, and the over/under once again is 5.5. So I guess that must be a theme in hockey.
Yeah. I don't know what. I don't know what. That might also be a glitch. Sometimes when it does it, it could be a system glitch, and they might just have everybody at 5.5. But
that's what we're running with. That's what my lines are telling me right now.
But anyway, that's going to be one of the best series out there because you have Tortorella, who's one of the best coach. Obviously, that's why he got nominated for the Jack Adams. They don't just do that for no reason. And then you have the young savviness of Sheldon Keefe, who took over for not to be mentioned coach, and that has worked. You seem like he kind of implemented his system a bit, but they were kind of in between, so they still couldn't be that good of a team in the regular season. And then since they had this camp, they looked a lot better in exhibition. So if Toronto can play like they played in exhibition and the third line plays well, then they can be a really scary team. The problem is if they play like they played in the regular season, Columbus is probably a better team than that. Because they play a more playoff brand too. Tortorella's team is always going to go full bore at you. Toronto's a team that has a tendency to back off sometimes and play a more soft-ish, like just more finesse game where you can't really do that against Columbus. So I would say first game, honestly, will probably go to Columbus in that one. Toronto might adjust afterwards, but I think it's because of adjusting. First game will probably go to Columbus. And also, they could start whatever goalie, but I would lean Merzlikins because the kid played amazing. But Corpy obviously played solid before he got injured, so you could go where you want there. I would just lean to the kid that went like 10-2 or whatever it was to start his career, some ridiculous number like that. I would probably just keep riding that until it fails. So.
Yeah, Columbus is one team I'm intrigued to see how they kind of bounce back after this layoff. Obviously, a good team before they went into that slump. So you're riding with Columbus, and what about the over/under? That was also 5.5.
5.5 for Toronto and freaking Columbus game. Well, if Toronto wins, they're gonna have to score probably because their defense is probably gonna allow about 3 to 4 goals. Not Freddie Anderson. Their defense. Because they're going to hang him out to dry probably like they did in the regular season if they allow 3 to 4 goals. Probably over because of Toronto's defense. Like I said, if they win, they're going to have to score probably because I think they're going to have to adjust in this first game to the aggressive style Columbus plays because they're not the most aggressive team. And that's going to probably allow Freddie Anderson, 1, to get pissed off, but 2, to be hung out to dry a couple times, and then you're adjust next game. So that's kind of the way I see that.
No, and we kind of already talked about this game, so if you just want to, this last game before the Flyers and the Wild and the Canucks. We kind of already talked about it in our preview of your favorite games of the day. So if you just want to give your picks here in this one, the favorite is Vancouver, and once again the over under is 5.5. So let's start with your let's change it up. Let's start with your over under. Where are you going? Over under 5.5 for this game between the Canucks and Wild.
The Canucks and Wild are two teams. Their power plays are both top 15. So obviously, if you get now the Canucks is top 5. So if you put them on the power play, the scoring might go whoop. But the penalty kill for the Canucks is also 16th, which is decent. That's what is the big difference between them and Minnesota. Minnesota's is 25th. That's a pretty big. So I think if there's not a lot of special teams involved, Minnesota has a good chance to win this first game because they also have, unlike the Canucks, more experience similar to Chicago with youngsters mixed in at forward as well as defense in their lineup, where the Canucks more have that more one-sided in their lineup, where obviously with the Wild you have Eric Stahl and you got Spurgeon, who's been there for a while, who's really one of the more underrated defensemen in all of hockey, but we're not going to get into that now. So I would think the Wild will win their first game because of a similar facet of how Chicago won their first game. And then you have to have the Canucks adjust in the second game. I don't think the Canucks will look bad at all in the second game, though. I think it'll just be an adjustment game for them.
Okay. And then the winner of the game will be the Canucks or Wild.
Wild because of the experience. I think they'll take the first game similar to how the lesser seeded Blackhawks did.
All right, there you have it. Hopefully Joe's picks go a lot better than my picks did because my picks yesterday in our basketball were not the best. So hopefully Joe does better here with the NHL picks. But now let's get into the most important game of the day, and that is the Boston Bruins and the Philadelphia Flyers. Finally, we get hockey back. First game in 4.5 to 5 months for this team. It's funny that you're opening up against the team that you last played the end of the year.
Perfect.
Before the suspension of the season. And, of course, if anyone remembers, the Bruins won that game 2-0. And the reason why it stung even more a little bit was because it ended the 9-game win streak the Flyers were on, preventing us from getting that fun double-digit number for the win streak.
Yeah, we would have finished at exactly that fun double-digit number. If we
exactly. That would have been a fun game to end on. You get to the big the 1-0 mark, 10 straight wins. But anyway, let's get into this one. Obviously, two great teams, round-robin matchup. We've talked about it before, what the schedule means for the Flyers. Obviously, you can't fall behind that 4 spot we're currently in, but if you do well in these games, you can move up to number 1 in the seeding. Let's start with before the straight-up matchup. Similar to the Sixers, the Flyers are very dominant at home. On the road, you get a huge struggle point, especially in your young, phenomenal goalie that everyone loves, rightfully so. And similar to the Sixers, are you worried at all about this being a neutral location away? You don't get any home games, or are you kind of the mindset I was with the Sixers, where it's neutral, it's not really a full-on road game? So you're not as worried because, again, real quick, Carter Hart 4-10-1 on the road with a 3.81 goals against and a .857 save percentage on the road. So obviously there's concern there in terms of away from home numbers. So what's your answer to that? Are you kind of just neutral, or are you worried about it being away from the Wells Fargo Center?
I don't think it's a huge thing because the Flyers, I mean, obviously we were significantly better at home, but it's not like we were like 5 games below 500 on the road and then we're just good at home, and that's the only reason we made it. I don't even know. Were the Sixers 500 on the road?
I do not think so.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the big difference there. At least the Flyers actually got over the 500 mark on the road and were half worth a damn. But we were actually pretty solid on the road, mostly because of Moose, who just the team played good in front of Moose on the road and when Hart struggled. But I don't think it's that big of a deal also because of just how we looked. We looked pretty ready and more playing similar to how you would see us play in general in the exhibition, where I think the Flyers, and I think also it kind of feels more homey than you would think because they keep bringing the sounds of each team's stadium into every game. So whenever you score, like that's why with the Blackhawks, you're da 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 the whole time, which is annoying as hell after a while.
Yeah, 6
So
goals of that.
yeah, so that's why, yeah, it's like hearing Chelsea dagger 500 times in my life is not the best thing. I mean, but the point I was making is I believe that the Flyers are going to play fine. I think they play great in camp. They look, first of all, Brian Elliott looked like the best he's looked since playing on the damn Blues in camp. So if you were to have a bad game from Carter Hart, I don't even know if that would affect us as much as I thought it would initially, because Elliott's looked like he is honestly ready to step in and kind of take a game for you if he has to, like he did in the regular season a couple times. So
Yeah.
I think that has a good chance of happening. I'm not too worried.
Okay. And the Flyers were 16, 18, and 3 on the road this year, so just under
So we
500.
put under 500. But then
But
you
I
have
kind
that 3 number with hockey where it's like you still get the 3 points for
yeah.
losing in overtime, where you don't get that in basketball.
But no, and you bring up Elliott and how he was able to step in on the road and get us the wins, and that kind of leads me to my next question. What kind of leash do you have for a young goalie in a setting like this? Like, obviously, you got a little more breathing room right now in the round robin. But once you get to a real playoff series where it matters, and even in these 3 games, I mean, they do mean a little bit. But where are you in a guy that struggled in these road atmospheres or whatever? Um, what kind of leash do you have? Do you let him go for a while, and you kind of treat it like a normal game where you 4 or 5 goals, then you might change it, or depending on how early they come or how bad they look. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, the thing is, Hart struggled on the road this year. When he first came up last year and obviously came in like a bat out of hell himself, he did not as much. So it's just a second year woes thing, I think, where like he didn't have an overall second year issue. He just had that blimp issue on the road because obviously he didn't have an overall second year issue. He had the best goals against of any rookie or second year any age netminder at his age since freaking Carey Price. So he couldn't. That's obviously the only blimp in his stats. So I think with that logic, if he's able, we also kind of have this being a whole new season with how long everybody paused. That's probably why you saw the Blackhawks come out as good. It's almost like everybody had a whole new summer to work. Dylan Strome looked like a much better player on the ice. You have a chance for guys like Fairby, who was looking somewhat confident but still teetering, to look amazing. Guys like Hart that had some aspects to just up it because it's a next year. We obviously saw that the Blackhawks rookie scored 5 points in the damn game. So I mean, like we saw guys come in and just go, "Oh yeah, I'm here, guys," already in the postseason. So I think Carter Hart will be fine. If he's not, though, like I said, Moose has played ridiculous since coming back in camp. He also looked ridiculous in the exhibition game. So I believe we'll be fine in general, and it would probably just be like a game. If Moose looks great, then you're going to keep him in. But if you win games like 4-3, it would probably just be like a game adjustment or a 2 adjustment where you just give Hart a breather, and then you probably go back to him. Because the only way I would think you would stick away from him is if Moose just comes in and plays amazing,
Yeah,
and then Hart's out. But if Moose plays like how he normally wins and gives up 3 goals, I think you would still try to go back to Hart because Hart's potential is giving up 1 to 2 goals a game. So
yeah, and Hart looked pretty good in his exhibition game.
yeah, he
So
looked great. Yeah.
we'll see what happens today. I'm very excited. Why don't we jump into this actual game? So before we kind of get into full-on matchups here with some players, when you look at this game, what are your first thoughts here in the direction that you think this game could go?
Well, my first thought is we have Tuukka Rask's number. Not Tuukka Rask's number. We also have a Locke's number. We don't have Tuukka Rask's number is what I meant to say. And Tuukka Rask now is not playing. So that makes a absolute astronomical difference in my eyes. Not of us winning. I said in the video I just did for the Flyers nitty gritty that before they released what was happening, that I believe if Rask played, we still would have won. It might have just been 2-1 or 3-2 because it would have been a lot more less scoring. On Halak, we won one game 3-2. I'm trying to remember the other one we run. I'm pretty sure it was a lot more high scoring than that. The non-road game. But I'll try to go back and look at that. But we had his number in general, so I think if we play him, it was 4-3. We won 4-3 as the other game. So if we can keep kind of just scoring and obviously play better defense than a little bit better defense than some of those games, just 4-3 and winning by one in the other game. But if we can do that, I think we're going to be fine against Boston, because normally it's like pitchers. When hitters hit against a pitcher, they know they got their number. Normally that doesn't change. You're coming in licking your chops, going, "Oh, we got this one today, boys." And that's normally the case that happens against that pitcher. And I think that's probably what's going to happen for how John Neese was, or not John Neese, how, damn, that's an old name, how Steven Matz was last year for the Mets with the Phillies, is probably just how Yaroslav Halak, who's also a pretty good goalie like Matz's pitcher, just is against the Flyers. It's kind of one of those inexplicable things. He's one of the best backups in hockey, sucks against us. So as long as that continues today, yeah, we're going to be fine.
Okay, very nice. Yeah, obviously, Bruins have had to deal with a few things through their camp, so it'll be interesting to see what happens here in this game and who's able to get out there on the ice for the Bruins, because again they've had to deal with some different things throughout their camp, especially when they got to the third phase. When I was reading into this game beforehand, I don't know if you saw this. Rask was missing for a lot of the camp. He has a fractured finger. I think he's still expected to play, but we'll see how much that affects him, or even if they decide to wait a game or two. Because again, don't forget, these are just round robin games. They're not like the other games yesterday where this is a playoff series. I mean, after these three games, whether you go 3-0, whether you go 1-2, 2-1, or even if you drop all three, you will still be playing and seeing other days. So it'll be interesting to see where these teams hold these kind of injuries in that sense.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's exactly why with Reyes, you shouldn't push it, because if you're the Bruins and something happens in game one, you look like a bunch of idiots, because you kind of pushed your goalie, because Halak doesn't have great numbers against the Flyers to play against the Flyers, and that's not good for you for the postseason. So you want to, and apparently he also had an illness. It wasn't just his finger. He also wasn't feeling well. It wasn't the COVID, obviously, because he was a game time decision. It wouldn't have been a game time decision. So it was probably something like the Eric Hosmer thing, where he just had a regular sickness and it's just going to take a little bit, like he was out for a game with San Diego. So it's either the finger or an illness that's probably keeping him out today. But either way, I'm agree with you. He'll probably be back, I would say, by game 3, because if they might just decide not to push it and just give him a couple of games and then just let Yari go and then let Rask go the next game before the playoffs, and then just kind of ride him there. But we'll see what happens. It depends how healthy he is, obviously, like Cassidy said.
Yeah, and then again, same thing with a couple other guys. We'll see what kind of shape they're in as they're still kind of getting back into things. They're obviously top player David Pastrnak. He was unavailable until the team's first practice in Toronto, so we'll see what kind of shape he's in. Whether he'll probably play, but whether he'll be kind of slower or if he's in full game shape
also just got back.
Who was that?
Marchand just got back.
He was on my list. He left the exhibition game the other day early after an injury. They had Friday off. They practiced on Saturday. He was a full participant, so he's expected to be ready to go for this afternoon's game. And then the final one, I don't know how to say his first.
Andre Casse.
Yeah, Andre Casse. As you mentioned, he was unavailable for the entire duration of Phase 3 and into Phase 4. So we'll see where he's at. So that's an advantage for the Flyers. We'll see how well they're able to take advantage of it. But let's get into some of the Flyers' expected lines. Where do you see, I think, some of the biggest question, and I haven't heard anything yet on what the final ruling is on the line. So if he's already not playing or whatnot, please feel free to tell me. But I think the big question right now I've been hearing is who gets the final defensive spot. Do they go with Gostisbehere, or will he be left off today's lines?
Well, I know my good friend Jamie said he could say this because of the stats these guys have. He has no concerns about Knack, Myers, or Hart performing in their roles. So obviously those guys, although we always thought those guys, I think everybody's question is if Fairby will be in the lineup. I think that's probably everybody's question mark because we had an extra forward in the scrimmage, and Joel kind of did look like the odd man out a little bit. As Thompson played very well, Raffle played very well, and others played very well. I think the answer to that question that's more important is he'll probably be in by the postseason because I think it'll be the lineup that just gels and works better by game one. I'm not like by today. I'm not so sure because, like AV said, we're also going to play with it a little bit to see what works best because you want to win in the round robin, but you also want everybody to be at the ante they have to be and ready to go for when it's actually series and that bulldog series play compared to just one game against these ex opponents. So spaced out by a day or two each time. So that's a lot different than playing in series play.
Okay, no, that's fair. And
Yeah.
um, the list I'm looking at that was projected has him left off for today's game. And I'll be interested to see it. Do you agree with the way they have this projection set up? The first line they have for the forwards, they have Giroux, Sean Couturier, and Jacob Voracek. Second line, Scott Lawton, Kevin Hayes, Travis Konechny. Third line, James Van Riemdijk, Derek Grant, uh, Kubel, Nick Abu Kubel, Michael Raff. Fourth line, Michael Raffle, Nate Thompson, and Tyler Pitlick. And then the defenders, Ian Provorov, Matt Nicholson, Travis Sanheim, Phil Myers, and the third line, Robert Haig and Justin Braun, with Carter Hart as the starting goalie. Is that basically along the lines you would expect? Do you think they'd mix it up a little bit somewhere else? But yeah, what are your
Did
thoughts
you
on that?
say the third line was Grant,
For
Knack, and JVR?
say that again. Sorry.
Who was the third line? Grant, Knack, and JVR?
Yes.
Okay, cool. No, because that's the line that looked fairly decent in scrimmage. I actually like that because they said they were going to move Lotz up because he's a great two-way player that adds to both sides of the ice, and obviously against teams like the Bruins and it's Tampa, obviously because they're completely offensive mind. They have a good defense, but they obviously try to just pound you. Um, so I think that really helps you because you can see with AV, he's had his best offensive confidence, obviously by scoring that flick of the wrist goal to end the game in the exhibition. And then G, Coots, and Voracek, you can't go wrong with that. That line, that's just like one of the better lines we've had recently. Hayes and TK also can pretty much play with whoever you put them with. So probably putting them with Scott Lowell, they probably love because TK's like, oh, cool, another guy that can be a pain in the ass on my other end. So like now you have two guys that can piss off the other team on one end, and then Kevin Hayes who can just naturally piss off the other team because of what he does on the ice. So you got Grant, JVR, Knack. I love that line because Knack I didn't want on the fourth line. I think he plays better on the third line. It's not that I wanted Pitlick on the fourth line because he played very well, but having him on the fourth line with Raffle and Thompson gives your fourth line offense because Pitlick had solid offense this year. Raffle also, as we know, when he can and actually has a chance, can put the puck in the net. And Thompson's a great face-off guy. So I do like that line. But Knack, I think, is going to be a difference maker in this play. I think he's going to be kind of one of our Swiss Army knife guys that's kind of a guy that you think is a secret weapon because he's so confident coming into this playoffs. He talked about how pumped he is to come into the playoffs with a lot of the quotes we get for Flyers Nitty, and I think he's a guy that's just going to go like how he did great this year. I think you're going to continue to see the same level of play even though it's the postseason. He just seems like a guy that's just able to focus on the game and not let all the other crap affect it. Yeah.
No, that's very good to hear that. So you're on the same page and you like that projected lineup, and we'll see. We'll see if that happens when it is
I also
finalized.
didn't comment on the defense. The defense lines look fine too. Hag and Braun were always together for the most part. Sanheim and Myers is perfect, and then we know Provi and Niski's one of the best graded lines in hockey, so that works fine.
So if you projected if they did switch it and went Shane Gostisbehere today, would they kick off? Who would be the odd man out there?
Uh, it might honestly be Justin Braun with how he's looked, but I would have to think Robert Hag because of the lesser experience. But because Braun hasn't and also Hag didn't play in the exhibition. That's why I would have to think Robert Hag. But Braun obviously, since coming back, has looked good, but some guys have outperformed him since coming back to camp. It's just I didn't think he was ever going to get knocked out of the lineup because he had a fairly solid season and he's a savvy veteran. So I would say it would have to be Hag. It's just obvious.
Okay.
Not because of his play, just because you're adding an offensive defenseman for a guy that is more bruiser and all that type of stuff.
Very good. So, if the Flyers were to fall in this first game and lose, who would you expect on the Bruins to be the X factor that carries them past the Flyers? Who gives the Flyers most trouble today? If that was that.
Probably Bergeron because he's actually been around a little bit more. Like obviously we said Marchand got back recently. I would go with Patrice because he's been there, done that. He's a guy that when I did my centers article for Pub Sports, I put fourth coming into the playoffs. So I would say Bergeron. Marchand would have potentially been the guy because he's a pesky guy and can kind of try to annoy and reverse annoy some of our guys that do that. But he's just stepping back in. So he's probably not going to be in his full effective game, you wouldn't think. But you never know with him because of his skill level. But I would go with Bergeron. He's always been their leader normally in any playoff series whenever they and Stanley Cup run whenever they have found a way to get it done in the most part. So I would go with him.
And then the other question: if the Flyers were to pull off this victory, who would you expect to? I mean, obviously Carter Hart's there. So maybe we leave him out of the equation. Obviously, for a big win like this, you'll need your goalie. So maybe we leave him out. So which other Flyer would you expect to step up here and carry the Flyers into victory? And if would Carter Hart be your player of the game for that case? If
I would think Carter Hart would be the guy that would step up in the series, but in terms of from my scoring perspective, it would probably continue to be because obviously we know Coots just steps up in the playoffs. That's just expected. I don't think anybody expects that not to happen. I would say TK will probably continue to take off in the playoffs, and then how he was your leading scorer, that might also be the case in the postseason. So therefore, I would say he would probably be the offensive catalyst to you winning the series, and obviously the goaltending and the stopper catalyst would be Carter Hart.
No, very nice. I agree with that.
Whatever. Now, obviously, that's whoever the hell we play in the first series of the playoffs, since you don't know that with the reseeding and stuff until we get closer and we figure out where the hell we're at. So
I will see one player I'm excited, and I think this helps and benefits. And obviously, we've talked about him plenty of times and how much we like him in Claude Giroux. Obviously, he doesn't get the reputation he deserves from the city overall. A lot of criticism when it gets to this time in terms of the playoffs and stuff. So I'm interested to see. Obviously, he knows all that. I mean, he might deny knowing it, but we all know those players see it in the long run. So I'm interested to see, and I think this layoff might have benefited him. Maybe when starting to, I mean, I don't know how many years he's played already now, but in the league. But obviously, he's been in the league forever. So maybe this kind of resets his legs, resets him, and maybe we'll get the regular season fresh Giroux. Which I mean, if he can play like that, and obviously we've been both big fans of him and defended him. But if we get that fresh regular season Giroux, I mean, this team really could take that next step. So I'm excited and interested to see what the layoff did for a guy like him.
that's true. That is a good point. The difference that a lot of people don't notice is Giroux actually he might not have the points numbers, but he had one of his better seasons under AV because he played. AV's system is not, I need you to stack up the points for me. It's, I want you to be great on both ends and be able to have that help you on the other end. Where normally, no matter who you are, unless if you're like Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl or people like that, you're not going to just continually stack up points in a system that somebody asks you to play that style. It's just the style in which it's be. But he did look very solid on both ends this year. I mean, 21 over 20 goals, over 30 assists. I would say he's a guy that probably naturally is going to step up in the playoffs. He's another guy that you normally just expect. His game normally goes from like wherever it's at, doesn't matter where it's at, to here. And he hasn't been in the playoffs for a while. That's the other thing we have to remember. The Flyers haven't been in it for a few years. They also haven't been this good for a long time. He even said this is the deepest team he thinks he's been on. So yeah, I think Giroux might actually play like an MVP version of Giroux potentially with all that, because he's basically saying, look, I think we have a chance to win this whole thing, and I'm going to make sure you guys stay focused to do so. And then Jake obviously is basically our other captain, so he'll make sure that he'll actually yell at you to make sure you stay focused if need be.
Yeah, I think you brought up a great point, and I think that's something different we've seen this year compared to the last couple of years. And in that sense, it's you mentioned it. You're not. I feel like AV system is more of a team hockey game where they can kind of come together. They're playing for each other, not one. Where I feel like in previous years, the systems that's been in place is you're relying on just like the star to kind of carry you to that next level. And when you're built like a team game, rather than relying on that superstar, I feel like that's part of the struggle. So I think AV's team system kind of really helped them get to that next level this year.
I completely agree, because it helped Jake. They talked about his defensive stats. Barkowitz wrote an article about it weeks ago, and his defensive numbers went up immensely under AV, playing on both sides of the ice. And some people still give him crap, which is very unwarranted now, because, well, it was very unwarranted to begin with, but it's very unwarranted now. That they're doing it to Voracek still. It was in general, but because he's playing his best overall game he ever did in his career with AV. He might have played his best offensive hockey with Peter Laviolette, but he still wasn't too good on defense because of the system that Lavi had us playing. Where with AV has Voracek playing his best hockey as a whole. Plus, he has the great playmaking ability, having all those assists this year. He just works perfect with the line he's on as well. Because Cooch can put the puck in the net or set you up, and G can put the puck in the net or set you up. So when he's on a line with Voracek, he's going to more say, let me try to set up for a one-timer. Because he knows Jake's going to be able to get it to him, and his one-timer has looked ridiculous so far in camp. It looks like it looked like 5 years ago when he would just set up in that Ovechkin's corner and then just gun it, and he had that great one-timer into the top corner. That's kind of what it looks like, right?
No, I completely agree. So before we get into predictions, what would be your 3 keys to a Flyers victory this afternoon?
Well, a big one is obviously Couturier, because you're going to have to go up against Brad Marchand. So, or not Brad Marchand, Patrice Bergeron, I mean. So you're going up against Patrice Bergeron is going to be huge, because you're going to have to stop him. Like I said, he's a big guy for a reason. They could win the game. I would say another one is Carter Hart, obviously, because you're going to want your goaltender to step up big and play a huge game in his first game. And then the third is probably, I just think, like I said, Giroux's going to naturally play good because it's the playoffs. So I'm going to go with TK, because I think that's going to be more the like coming out party in the playoffs type thing, even though this is the round robin. But in the start off to the playoffs type thing, round robin, it'll be like when he really gets going, and I think he's going to have a good round robin to then carry into the playoffs. So I would go with TK, because Giroux, to me, is just a guy I expect to do well in the postseason, and even in this before the postseason, whatever you want to call this round robin match.
Yeah, I think I agree with those guys. I think one big thing is you got to take advantage of special teams.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if Rask ends up playing, he's a little beat up right now. He didn't practice yesterday because he was quote unquote unfit to. So we'll see if he gets a start. But even if it's the backup goalie, when you get on that power play, take advantage of it. Try to stay out of the box yourself. Obviously, that goes without being said and done.
It says he is feeling better, by the way. I just wanted to point that out. It said he was ruled unfit to play, but is feeling better. And then when I looked something up on Twitter, it said Cassidy said he would not be playing, so I don't think he's going to play. But
So I mean, that's a plus for the Flyers there. But yeah, take advantage of that once you get out on the power play. I feel like sometimes the Flyers kind of miss opportunities in that sense. So I'd say take that. That'd be my one. I'll just give one. I think take advantage of the special teams there, and that'd be key to a victory here possibly. And then one final thing here before prediction. I saw this on Twitter. This question on Twitter the other day. So I'm going to get your take on it. Which team is better, this team or the Flyers' Stanley Cup run against the Blackhawks that one year when they ultimately fell in the Cup?
current team, it's not even close. The other team was pretty good, but we didn't have as deep of a defense. Our third line defense was, I don't even freaking remember. I think Ryan Parent was on it, so that describes our third line defense. Like you saw number 77 on the ice, and you're like, damn, he's still on the team. Like that's how much he played. Like he played maybe like 7 minutes a game, so like you would be like, oh crap, that's right. But no, we have a good 3 lines on defense this year, especially with how Hager stepped up. You got 2 good goalies. You had a carousel of goaltenders in that year because all hell broke loose, and then all hell broke loose in the playoffs because Bush got injured, and then Layden. So yeah, we were definitely in better shape overall this year. We have more depth as a whole as well because you figure people get injured, you go to Frost, who's one of your top prospects. Fairby isn't. You go to Fairby, who's not in right now. So you have all these great guys. Zamula is a top defensive prospect in general. So if somebody you don't want anybody to get injured, but you have a lot more depth than if people got injured in that postseason, which they did, and we still got 4. So yeah, this team is definitely a lot better because you throw out 4 lines and 3 of them usually sometimes look like a first line on like a team that would be not a high market team. Because sometimes that Grant, when they have Grant, JVR, and Knack together, that line plays like a top 2 line a lot of times with the way that they play together. But obviously on the Flyers, you ain't putting those guys on the top 2 lines because of the guys you have to put in the top 2. So.
Okay. Very good. So then I guess now it's time. Final question. Final couple questions here. Flyers, Bruins. Flyers won the season series, or are leading the season series right now, 2-1. Bruins are the only team that reached that 100-point mark. So best team points wise in the league. What happens to that? Bruins are favorite by 1.5. Do the Bruins cover that, or are the Flyers going to pull off the underdog upset in this game? Joe, what is your leading prediction here?
I think the Flyers, because again, we've had Halak's number, and normally that you don't forget how to score on a goalie when you've had his number the whole time. So I think we'll be able to win this game. The other thing is the Flyers in goals are actually a tad bit, not a lot, but a notch better than the Bruins. We're 7th, the Bruins are 9th. So yeah, Boston, get over it. And then they're better in shots on goal, but that's also by a minuscule tad. It is 10 to 16th, but that's because with the shots and goal ranking, 0.2 separates you by 3 because it's 32.1 shots to 31.4. So that's not a big difference. It's just because of the way that ranking works. The difference obviously for us is our power play's 14th, theirs is 2nd. You don't want to put the Bruins on the power play. Now Brad Marchand just got back, so he might not be as sharp on the power play, but you still don't want to put the Bruins on the power play. That's the big thing for me. If you can keep them off the power play, we're the best face-off team in hockey. That's why I also brought Couturier up as a key, because if he can keep winning face-offs against Berge, they don't have beyond Berge, they have good centers, but once you get to the 3rd and 4th line, Thompson is much better than their 4th line center at faceoff. And Grant is probably much better than, I don't know who they put in at 3rd line center today, but most likely better than whoever they slotted in at the 3rd line center. So that's what I really like with our matchups. That's how we normally beat Boston too, taking advantage of winning draws and just scoring on them and scoring. Their first and goals allowed, they're not against us, because normally we actually score 3-4 against them when they only allow 2.3. So that's why they're just a team when it's not having Tukin. We seem to be a little bit of an Achilles heel for them, and I think that'll continue today.
All right, sounds good. Sounds like a good Flyers win. And then the final one here, I guess, would be If you listen to the rest of this show, you know where I'm going with this, but the over-under is 5.5.
Um, it is Yari. Well, like I said, the one game we won 4-2 or 4-3, so that would be 7 goals. So yeah, I would say somebody had a 4-2 prediction on Twitter, and that's kind of what I was kind of leaning towards in today's game too, 4 or 5-2, because you might pull the damn goalie and then it would be 5-2. But I would say that's a pretty good prediction, so therefore it would be just over.
Sounds good. Hopefully you're right, because Flyers need to win. Flyers got a lot of pressure on them from Philadelphia because the other Philadelphia teams have lost their return to opener game. So a lot of pressure for the Flyers.
Well, one doesn't exist yet until it comes back tomorrow. So.
Well, we lost our first game. That was the.
I know.
Yeah. Philly get 2 chances. They're returning to play again tomorrow. Hopefully, knock on wood. But yeah, there we have it. Hopefully, we get a Flyers victory today. First of 3 games in the round robin. I will say, I did read. I'm sure you know this, but just to give listeners the idea, if you watched the overtime game yesterday, that is playoff rule overtime. So they do the normal playoff format there. But if the Flyers do find an overtime game in these 3 round robin games, it will be regular season overtime rules of 3-on-3, 5 minutes, and then a shootout. Just to give everyone a heads up, because I did think that was interesting that it was the 2 different rules set up. So I thought I'd point that out there.
By the way, according to this, since I commented on a third line, it would be Grant going against Charlie Coyle. So that's a decent face-off matchup. I think Grant probably beats him in face-off numbers, but I would have to look into Charlie Coyle.
Okay. So. But yeah, as we wrap it up here, I don't know if you have any final thoughts or anything you want to plug before we end the show.
No, I mean, if people want to I'm going to do a round robin one it's the first day of games today, but if you want to check the X factors for the play-in teams, I put that out on pubsportsradio.com, and I'm going to do the round robin. I'm going to finish it today, and it'll probably come out tomorrow because the first games came out today, so the X factors one will probably be later today or tomorrow, but if you want to check those out, overall, I mean, it's just stoked that the Flyers are back, that hockey's are back. That's, like I said, it's the gritty summer of grit, and this team is ready. This team is motivated. This team, I think G even thinks it is better than the 2010 team. He's probably not going to come out and point blank say that, but he said he thinks this is the deepest team he's on, which is almost beating around the bush to say that. So I believe this team is going to do some great things. Got a great mix of vets with youngsters, which, as we know, really helps. So I think that's going to take us a million miles a minute, and we're going to do good in this postseason. I don't see the Flyers honestly getting out before the conference finals, but
fantastic to hear as we wrap this up. Yeah, that's all we got today. Hopefully, again, got Flyers in action today. Finally, it's been 4.5 months. They're the final Philly team to return here. And check us out as we'll continue to provide content as the seasons still move along. Once again, Flyers in action today at 3:00 Eastern against the Boston Brewers. That is it for today's episode of Grittiest Takes. For Andrew and Joe, have a great day. Enjoy the game and just enjoy everything else.